An official welcome. I'm Edie Fraser, humbled to be CEO of the Women's Business Collaborative, where we work together with 52 major women's business organizations and with a vibrant board and nearly 300 advisory and more and leaders council champions. We are about equal position, pay, and power for gender and diversity. And we report 33% diversity in our leadership because we're accountable for everything. We also are building at least 10% of our leadership to be men, and we're calling champions of change. So how great today, as Robert Reiss and Becky SHAMBAUGH and Zeilstra and all of us salute three men who are really driving of change. So I think you know that we've got 9 action initiatives. We're updating our report for September on women CEOs in America with 4 of our partners. On our C-suite, we are truly looking at dramatic change and reporting it. On our board of directors, you know, we do a monthly report on women joining public boards. And for the last several months, we are seeing nearly gender equality. The month of June saw 44% women joining public boards, many first-time board members, 34% women of color, and we're now tracking and beginning to track private boards and capital boards. The same thing is true on everything we do. We've got strong goals for 2025, but we measure ourselves at least every 6 months, and we can't do it without beacons of change. We do want to mention my partner, Gwen Young, our Chief Operating Officer, and I want to make sure you're all invited to our summit, which is September 21st, 22nd. It will be extraordinary. We have 13 CEOs participating, 8 of them getting our Gender and Diversity Award. And then we have champions that are clearly like Indra Nooyi, or we have other CEOs, the new CEO of CVS Health, introducing our Secretary of Commerce. So please join us. And again today, just a shout out to CBRE, to Diane Pattison that nominated is Bob for you to speak. And we have 2 CBRE members on our advisory council, to Matt Carter, for you for joining as a sponsor, as a tech leader, and being on our advisory council. Thank you, Matt Carter. And to Tim Wentworth. Tim, you get the award of the day because so many of the listeners have come in, and we have a partnership with Cigna, with Express Scripts. You've got 2 people on the advisory council, and you are a sponsor of us at WBC. So to the entire family of Evernorth, Express Scripts, and Cigna, thank you. Without further ado, it is our joy to turn the call now to Robert Reiss of the CEO Forum and Becky SHAMBAUGH, CEO, SHAMBAUGH Leadership, both on our boards of directors, and you'll be hearing from Zeilstra as well. So thank you, everyone. And now for the real learning. Robert and Becky.
I was just noted that I needed to unmute, so I started a little bit early. But I am Robert Reiss, and I wanted to say thank you to our fearless leader, Edie. And it's so exciting to see all of the results in position, pay, and power, and gender equality. So this is going to be a fun discussion And we have leaders from 3 different industries, from commercial real estate, technology, and healthcare. And from commercial real estate, which we're going to hear from first, we're going to hear from Bob Sulentic, who's the president and CEO of CBRE, the world's largest commercial real estate organization. And certainly that's at the forefront of a lot of change happening right now. They've been 9 years in a row consecutively as a most admired company, about 100,000 employees. And so we're going to speak with Bob, we're looking for. Then on technology, we have Matt Carter, who's the CEO of Aryaka, who is the leader, I would say, in the customer experience, which they are known for in technology, network, and security. And they built a tremendous model there. And then we're going to move over into healthcare. And Tim Wentworth is the CEO of Evernorth. And this is, it's one of the most innovative organizations that I've seen really in healthcare. They're pretty significant. I believe about 116 billion in revenue. And so first we're going to interview these, and that's with my famous co-host, Becky SHAMBAUGH. And then after we interview each of them, then we're going to have a small panel and we're going to hear about our vision. So in saluting you 3 in leading your industries, I'm going to hand it over to Becky.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Matt, Bob, and Tim for joining us today. We're just honored to have you here. And as Edie said, we can't do this alone. I think while women need to lean in and really help to achieve the more equitable workforces, men have such a critical role. And without them, it's not possible. So upfront, thank you for your commitment, your leadership, and being a role model for so many other people out there. So we are eager to learn from you today, and Robert and I are going to engage in a dialogue with you on key questions around your great leadership within your organization, but also how you have built that more inclusive, gender balanced organization that you have. So Bob, I'd like to start off with you. CBRE is the, as Robert said, the largest commercial real estate company around the globe, and that's significant. Congratulations to that. I will just paraphrase, and I know that if folks get on your website, they'll find similar information, but you've quoted that, people are at the center of your strategy, right? And that diversity of backgrounds and experiences, really help us to best serve our customer. And so you've walked that talk, and it's just not on the website, but please share with us a little more about CBRE and when it comes to gender equality and its connection to diversity and inclusion. What are you most proud about? Just kind of starting off here, because we want to really showcase some of your accomplishments and then maybe a little bit about how you're able to achieve these.
Well, first of all, Becky and Robert, thank you for having me. This is an important topic. It's important to our company. It's important to the other companies represented here. And I'll comment on diversity kind of broadly and specifically gender diversity. I'm going to start with the philosophy that underpins what we're trying to get done. In a very pragmatic way, we've said that we want to be one of the truly great companies in the world. We exist to serve our constituents. Our constituents are our employees, our clients, our shareholders, and the communities we participate in. And then, of course, others like the suppliers we work with and so forth. If you want to be a leader or among the best in any endeavor, I believe you have to have a strong leadership team and strong people down through the organization. And it's a very pragmatic notion to say that if you want to build an organization with strong people, the way you get that done is you select from the full population of people that are available out there. That means you have to include women and people of color and people from all different nationalities and sexual orientation and men, right? You have to include all of them. And so we deeply believe for us to serve our constituencies in a very pragmatic way, and achieve the things we want to achieve, we need to build an organization of people that was representative of all those groups. Well, roughly half the people in the world are women. And so we need a lot of women to get this done. And what am I most proud about with regard to the things we've gotten done with our women? Well, number one, we have a board. It all, you know, when you want to build a leadership team, you kind of have to start at the top. So today, CBRE has 9 independent directors. 7 of those 9 are diverse. We have 3 women and 4 diverse men on our board. If you would have looked back a decade, we had 2 diverse members out of 10 independent directors. If you look at our company's executive committee, that's the group of executives that lead the company. There are 12 members of that committee other than myself. 6 of those are diverse, 3 diverse men and 3 women. That's a very big deal, because once you start building diversity at the top, you send the message to people that if you're diverse, you can be comfortable being here. Just look at our leadership team. The other thing I would comment on in that regard is we, like so many big companies, and we have 100,000 people, we have these levels of our organization that are what we call our people team, or our HR organization tracks. In our leadership levels 1 through 3, over the past 3 years, we've had double-digit increases in both women and people of color among those leadership ranks. So, you know, we're proud of that because of the numbers themselves. But what we're more excited about is the fact that it increases the odds that we'll have more diversity down through the organization. And then one of the things that I've been just super proud of for years is our women's network. We have a women's network here in the Americas with 4,500 members. They have done spectacular things for our women in advancing their cause, but they've done spectacular things for all of our diverse people. And I've always looked at that group and said, if that group of women was a separate real estate company unto itself, it would be one of the 4 or 5 biggest, most compelling real estate companies in America on its own. So, you know, if you start with the what are you proud of, I think that's where I'd start, Becky. And
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and if I could just add some color, I know that the commercial real estate business has been predominantly in the past, maybe not now, thanks to you, men. And that's not right or wrong, but you've obviously moved the needle here. Is there one piece of advice in terms of how have you created those pathways for women to really advance, right? To really ascend into more of those. Is there one thing that you've really helped to do in the organization, or your organization has done?
Yes, well, if Lisa Konitschka, the head of our women's network, was here, she would know how many times I've had this conversation with her. And it's a little maybe unorthodox. I've had it with our board. It's sometimes even a bit controversial. And there's all kinds of wonderful things going on out there to promote diversity. There's mentoring programs and scholarship programs and recruiting at diverse universities and training of all different types, and support for diverse hires as we bring them into the organization financially. But I think all of that takes a backseat to one simple thing that I talk to our people in our board about, and that is hire and promote diverse people wherever you can. Don't tell me about all the programs you run. When I talk to our leadership team at the end of the year, those that report to me, I say, tell me who you hired and tell me who you promoted. When that happens, as I said a minute ago, our people and people that might join our company start to see examples of leaders that look like them, and they say to themselves, yeah, this is a good place to be. I think that dominates everything else.
Right. When you see it, you believe it, right? And then it seems to be more of a reality. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for that. That's great advice. And now I'm going to turn it over to Robert to continue the dialogue.
Thank you, Becky. So, Bob, I want to hit on 2 really important topics. One, what everyone wants to know about is what is the future of commercial real estate? We've seen an exodus from the cities, and it seems, and we're hearing that they're going to change a lot of zoning so that the top 20 floors now become residential. So one is, you are probably in the seat more than anyone that I know in the world to talk about that. But then while you're talking about the future of commercial real estate, you've done some tremendous things at CBRE in terms of sustainability. So then if you could shift after your forecast into what CBRE is doing in sustainability.
Yeah, well, I kind of chuckled. And by the way, one of the speakers on here today, Matt Carter, is on the board of our very, very good competitor, JLL. So make sure he answers that question for you too, Robert, because it's the question all of us get all the time. What's the future of real estate? What's the future of office space? And I laugh because part of the answer is we can tell you what we think, but nobody knows, right? Particularly as it relates to office space. We're all kind of en masse learning what's going to happen. Here's what we're saying now, because it's what we believe now. We think that people will go back to work more than work from home. There will be a hybrid circumstance. We've learned some really good things. For instance, this event today, even if we were sitting here 2 years ago talking about this event, we may conclude among ourselves it would be smarter to do it this way than put everybody in the air and fly them and get them together. So we've learned about the efficiency of using Zoom and Microsoft Teams and the other options that are available to us. And that's not going to go away, because there's some health benefits in terms of the people themselves that are involved, in terms of the environment. There's efficiency benefits. So we're going to see some hybrid work from home, work from remote places type circumstance. And companies like ourselves and our good competitor JLL, even though we're in the office building businesses, we'll do it ourselves. But I think people are going to come back to the office 80–85% for the following reason. Number one, collaboration is hard if you do it too much remotely. Team building is hard. Bringing new people into the organization is hard. It's really hard to solve interpersonal problems when you're not together physically. And so I think most enterprises, ourselves included, are going to come back to the office, maybe 80–85%. We'll see how it sorts out. And I think that there's going to be things like flex space, remote working that'll be prominent. But I think we'll be back together. The other thing that's a really big deal, and even this is a little bit controversial, we have got to get people across the United States and around the world more vaccinated than we are today, because our future and how things are going to settle out is going to keep getting interrupted by things like this Delta strain of the virus. And whatever the right future circumstance is, we're not going to get there until we get beyond the disease. So that's really important. I will say this: during the COVID, what we call the COVID era, our company, our competitors, and our clients, one thing that businesses in general should be super proud of is we put the health of our people ahead of everything else, ahead of selling new business, ahead of profitability. It's been our top priority. It's been the top priority of our competitors, and it's been the top priority of our customers, our clients. So the business world ought to be proud of that. And I'm certainly proud of that as it relates to our own company.
Can you give, we're actually pretty much out of time, but I would like a few sentences about what you're doing in sustainability.
Yeah. Well, CBRE manages about 7 billion square feet of property around the world. And we come at sustainability two ways. What we do in our own facilities, we've established a number of parameters by which we're going to measure our carbon footprint over the years, aggressive parameters. And we intend to live up to them. One of the things that I always say to our people is when we set these goals, we're not setting them for publicity purposes. We're setting them because we intend to do it. And then we have a number of market-facing offerings to help our clients, both in their operations and in the buildings they own, become more sustainable. I'll give you an example of something we just did. We just sponsored a company through what we call a SPAC, which I think most people have heard of now. And it's a company that installs solar panels on site in commercial buildings. And a lot of our investment now is in enterprises that have that kind of feature. So it's a very big deal to us. Our clients appreciate it, our clients demand it, and we've been acknowledged in a number of prominent publications for the work we've done in that regard.
Well, thank you, Bob. I commend you on your great work and your vision. Now I'm going to hand over to Becky, who's going to start off with Matt, the CEO of Aryaka, and that's several companies he's been CEO of.
Hi, Matt. I think I'm talking to a serial entrepreneur here. So I'm sure a lot of us have in common what you do. But listen, this is kind of like one of those big macro questions, but let me just give you some context. This last year, the last couple of years have been extremely disruptive. And I think everybody here would agree to that personally and from organizations and just society. And I know nothing has been really perfect, ideal, but there's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of narrative, there's been a lot of misfortune in our society as a whole. And so I wondered from your lens, where you're sitting, what do you think really needs to happen? And I guess, leaders are there for a reason, right? To help to change the narrative, to really start taking that action. But I think we are so yearning for that more peaceful, harmonious society, and inclusion and diversity is part of that. But it was like, I think COVID took the Band-Aid off, right? And I think it was there before that. So it's much more visible. So there's no silver bullet here, but we'd love to hear from you. What advice you have of how we can learn some lessons and move on to have a more sort of harmonious, peaceful society.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's great to be here. I don't have as you said, there's no sort of bulletproof answer. You're living a life, you're engaging in the world, and you're trying to make a contribution. And some of it really starts just with values. I mean, what kind of person are you? I live sort of by the cardinal rules, right, of life. Just treat others as you wish to be treated. And that extends into my day-to-day and how I interact. I'm not always perfect at it, right? You make mistakes as a human being. But even, just trying to live like that in environments that I've worked in, I've always approached them with a thought process of everybody wakes up every day. They want to have some sort of purpose. They want to have some sort of meaningful contribution. I view that as a CEO, as a leader. That's to our advantage, that to help people to want to fulfill their potential. And I go back to my days as playing high school sports. And you could tell when you're out on the basketball court, the game's on the line. The guys who worked hard not to get open, they hit. It's the guy or the gal who takes the shot. And you're either going to miss it or you're going to make it. But you got to have the confidence, the courage. And so I guess I've come to this thought process in my, X number of years of living, that it takes courage to live your life on your terms. And I think that to try to make a much more harmonious world, people have to, I think, look to themselves as well. What kind of person are you? And are you willing to live your life on your terms, or are you living a life that you think others think you should live? And I think a lot of people live a life like that. And that's just not me. And I try to encourage others. Hey, you got great ideas. You bring something to the party. And so let us all embrace it and see it and engage it. So engage it, engage life, engage with others. That's sort of my thought process. And that has helped me to create, I like to think, a much more diverse environment to attract really just a diversity of thoughts and people to those environments.
Yeah, it really starts with us. It starts with I first, right?
Yes.
But I think if you really put inclusion in context, right, and diversity, if you take a deeper dive, it really is about pulling back and really being curious to learn and respect others' backgrounds and be, want to be curious about that. And I think we kind of stop about, really wanting to learn about somebody's background or heritage or why they are what they are. And I think my own personal view, it's time we do that. And I've talked to different CEOs who feel like the corporate world or institutions can play a role in having that more harmonious society. Is there anything that you can share with other executive CEOs and their organizations of what we need to do to create that movement as as organizations out there to really help serve society in a better way?
You know, I guess I just, again, going through my own career, 30 plus years of working in corporate America and the ups and downs. I mean, what you may see here today is some image of some guy who looks successful, but what you don't see are all the, arrows in the back, all those lonely days and nights when you're alone with your thoughts, trying to figure it out. And I never had a Obi-Wan Kenobi whisper in my ears, giving me great words of wisdom. If you have had that person or persons in your life, good for you. But most of us, honestly, are trying to figure it out. And I would say to other CEOs that, your greatest assets, as Bob mentioned, are people. You got to have a people strategy. I know that a lot of our job as a CEO, got to have a strategy, how we go to market, make sure you have the right products, etc. But none of that amounts to a hill of beans if you don't have a real thoughtful approach around talent and how to acquire it and how to retain it. And often what tends to happen is you're benchmarking against yourself or what you think are, attributes of what success looks like. I'm not interested in a female man, right? You don't want a woman who's just like another guy, right? You want her to bring her own thing to the party and help redefine and evolve the context of these environments. If we could start all over and you said okay, we're going to bring all these different people together and create a corporation. Do you think the corporation would look like it does today? Do you think the attitudes and the behaviors would be what we see today? I think the answer is no. I think you would have a different kind of environment that still, by the way, can be innovative, that can still be, competitive in the right sorts of ways. So I just like to think that what I try to do is help other CEOs is, look at your talent and be open-minded. Don't benchmark, people against yourself or guys who are just like you. I use this example, and Bob has heard this example. Great basketball player, Dennis Rodman, used to play with the Detroit Pistons and then went on to play with the Chicago Bulls. And by all accounts, everybody hit Dennis Rodman, Dennis Rodman, he's like, ooh, right? He's, crazy or whatever it is. But every team that guy went to got better, right? But he was different. And the great leaders, Phil Jackson, Chuck Daly, who's the coach of the Detroit Pistons, they saw his difference. They didn't see his difference as a problem. They saw his difference as a positive and were able to incorporate that into their environment to create winning organizations. And it's the same sort of thing, what I find. I look at people and say, what do you do well? And how do we bring that to our organization? So I would say that sort of thought process is actually far more important. Are you open to differences?
Right. And it kind of gets back to, it starts with us, right? And it's a
Right.
choice, but so important. Thank you. If we could just all freeze that in a bottle and practice that every day.
Right.
You know what, Matt? That would make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Robert, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, thank you, Becky. So I actually, Matt, when you were talking and mentioned basketball, I remembered, you telling me a while back about the Dennis Rodman, and it's such a great example that the different types of people are what bring out excellence in everyone, and
Right.
that's what makes a great team. So technology has been more male-driven, definitely, and you look at STEM and what's happened, and you've been in technology like I guess like close to 3 decades or something.
Yeah.
Not to make you look old, but you have.
Yeah.
Right?
No, but I'm old. I got a bad back, bad
Sprint
knee.
with
So.
Dan Hesse and those great teams back then. So what can we do to help drive gender equity in technology?
It's a tough thing. So there are different occupations within technology. And so one of the things I think we can do, it actually starts really earlier in life, encouraging more women around science and math. not to say, hey, we want every woman to go do science and math and then go become an engineer for Google and places like that. But I think that the whole, how we teach these subjects, it's not just women, but there's a whole lot of people who get totally intimidated by math, by science, because we've been uncreative in how we teach people these particular subjects. I mean, there are other subjects that, you find women tend to be very knowledgeable about. They're knowledgeable about technology and stuff like that. There are many who are, but those other subjects tend to invite people to learn and much more inclusive. Technology tends to be the Dracula cross, dun, 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 right? The garlic in front of you. And there's this sort of intimidation that goes on. And I think it starts with, do we have good teachers who encourage folks to learn and not look at them and say, I know the number of women who have had teachers say to them, even me, you're not smart enough to do math. You're not smart enough to do science. That's not the way to increase the pool. And so I think it starts early and getting CEOs and other leaders involved in helping to encourage at the earlier stages in elementary school, et cetera.
Well, thank you, Matt, for those inspiring words. And I know that your heart is in this. And speaking of heart, our final speaker is Tim Wentworth, CEO of Evernorth. And Tim, I want to talk about your passion, because I understand that it's been part of you for your life, really, in your upbringing, and that you've become the executive sponsor for Cigna's Women Enterprise Resource Group. And this is something that hits you viscerally. Talk about where your passion for gender equity emerged from and how it's manifesting itself today.
I appreciate that question. Appreciate being here with all of you. Yeah, it's incredibly personal. I mean, if you look at my bio, I went to a community college. My best education was being raised by a single mom who at age 33 had 3 boys to raise. My dad was gone. He was supportive financially, but not in a significant way. We ended up having to move and so forth. And I remember mom had to go get a job. And I remember mom coming home and crying because, and you're not going to believe this, there's going to be a collective gasp here. Her boss in 1974 made all of the women in the office line up and kiss him on the cheek for their paychecks each week. That was the environment in 1974. So let me start by declaring we've made progress. But that is not from a great starting point. But I watched mom then, as we moved to Rochester, back to Rochester, take a job as a clerk at a bank. I watched my mom outwork everybody. I watched her work for a man named Dan Murphy, who was a hero in my life and in my mom's life, who gave her a shot. And I ultimately saw my mom 20 years ago retire with no college education, having started at the bottom as a full vice president at that bank. And my brothers and I were, dare I say, inspired. And it wasn't with her lecturing us, it was watching, it was seeing, it was the power of role modeling for us. So that's one of the fundamental reasons. I think the second piece is I have 3 daughters, 2 of whom are directly in STEM as adults. One's a college math professor, one works for a biotech software company, and the third is also a degreed teacher, as well as a wife of 39 years who, by the way, I competitively ballroom dance with as an amateur. And so literally sort of raising strong women, being married to a strong woman and committed to that, and seeing the power in my life that all 4 of my girls have every day has been profound. And then finally, and Edie, I don't know if you knew her, but I was fortunate enough to spend 5 years working in the last 5 years that Mary Kay Ash, the great female entrepreneur, actually led Mary Kay Cosmetics. And Mary Kay Ash for me really, really brought it all home and my daughters still quote her, in terms of being a powerful woman who, as one of my fellow panelists commented on, I thought it was a great line that Matt said, I don't want a woman who's a man who wants to be a man. I want a woman who brings herself as a woman, because that's where the real strength of our diversity comes from. And Mary Kay was all about that. But Mary Kay, I helped open up South America, China, Russia. They have 2 million women in China today, for example. And every one of these women taught me that in the second and third world in particular, but also here in the first world, women are the powerful engines of economic growth in very large parts of those economies. I can tell you that micro lending is most powerfully done in villages to women. And I learned that very directly from Mary Kay Ash herself. So while I love being the sponsor of our women's ERG, I love being a leader who's been able to lift up other women and work for some tremendous women leaders over the years that I've worked. There's still work to do. And so I stay engaged because I think I can be a part of that.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to hand it over to Becky, and she's going to talk with you about what organizations can do. Becky?
Thanks, Robert. Well, Tim, thank you for your story. I'm just kind of like still lifted from that, coming off of that. You know, I talked to a number of CEOs, and I think they have a similar story why they are cheerleaders or supporting women really committed and doing the work. They know the statistics and the head part of this, but it's the purposeful connection, right? It's the heart connection. They have daughters at home. They have a mother that was a role model. Their wife has inspired them. And so everybody's kind of in equal footing, right? So it's very purposeful. And I think even really motivates executives who are men to be really lean in and be a part of this conversation. So thank you for that. You know, last time I checked, about 60% of the upcoming workforce in healthcare are women, and that could be on the rise. So that's a huge amount. And so on top of that, the layer of complexity is the workforce coming back from the pandemic. And a lot of women we are seeing, maybe not within your organization, but are trying to still decide their equation for this, what that's going to look like. Some women are opting out. I call those regrettable losses, right? They don't think they can come back to work and do everything the same way again. And so I think it's a critical strategic question around talent, around people, around performance for organizations. But backing into this, what is your vision? What are you seeing out there? Or what are your thoughts around Evernorth and how you're going to really look at this future focus around the workforce structure?
Yeah, it's important because, and I appreciated, Bob, in your opening, talking about our innovation. And innovation is a team sport, and it requires really great diversity as well as an environment that is maximally inclusive to actually have it happen. And so for us, that whole question of how do we sustain and develop a great workforce is central to our business strategy as it is to all of my fellow panelists. In our case, that innovation gene really does drive, a more natural process, and it ties to our values as a corporation of engaging everybody, including our women. And we've got a great level of representation. We have more to do, but we're at about 45% directors and above, shooting to get to 50%. So we've got work to do, but certainly have made a lot of progress. And, I think McKinsey called out 5 levers that, as I think about the future, in a recent women in healthcare article, and I add 2 to it. So the 5 levers they called out were setting clear goals, so that we are all accountable, we got transparency in the data, and we are fundamentally driving at the right goals for inclusion and diversity. 2, diverse slates, and not equivocating on that, and that's the role of HR, but it's also the role of line management to insist on that, and then to deeply engage with those slates of candidates. Implicit bias training, because it's not sufficient to put diverse candidates in front of folks that don't have real good clarity around their own natural blind spots. 4th is clear evaluation criteria, really important. I think one of the great outcomes of all of this on a number of levels is we're rethinking what's really required in a job, what's really required in terms of physical presence in a workplace on a persistent basis versus perhaps a more hybridized basis, role by role. And that's going to remove barriers, not just for women, but specifically for women as it relates to being engaged. The 5th is putting more women in line for bigger roles. All of that makes sense. The 2 I would add are building a strong female presence in your boardroom and in your C-suite, as again, one of my fellow panelists talked about, really important to setting that standard. And as I told Edie Friedman from NASDAQ when she interviewed me about my board at Express Scripts, because we had the most diverse board at one point in the Fortune 500, my answer was, finding diverse candidates isn't the challenge. It's making sure your culture is one they want to be part of. And so for me, I hired really diverse bosses, and we worked together on that problem. And the last piece is I think getting data and analytics depth in your HR function to be more than just cheerleading and sort of spiritual sort of leaders, but rather really be grounded in facts and data, because that's where you make progress. Anything short of that is good intentions that doesn't have the level of accountability you want. And so those have been the things that we've been focused on, and we've been very successful, I would say. We appointed our most two recent appointments at our executive leadership team were females, head of technology, head of marketing for all of Cigna. That's only 12 people corporately total. We've added 2 to the group. And we also, our 2 most important line businesses, our government business and our Express Scripts business, which is almost 80% of my total revenue, were just recently both staffed with female leaders. So women in line roles. So people can see that women can do any role in the company, not just those that may have been more traditionally expected to be filled with women. Those are the kind of things that people will point to as tangible results that they will build off of and that they will then hold us to a higher standard to, frankly.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a theme across, right? I think one word today is that intentionality. You can say it, but let's put some things in place, A, and then B. I'm also hearing, Tim, that you're being pretty prescriptive, right? It's just not kind of the broad critical mass. It's really, dialing into those demographics where we need to really have that lift, right? And then holding folks accountable. So, well, I wish you well on that and continuing to be on that curve. Robert, I think we're good for now on this. I want to leave some time for, our shotgun exercise, right? To kind of wrap it up.
Okay, so for a shotgun, we want to have, if you can, a 1-sentence answer. Now you could have 5 independent clauses, but not too long, because we want to have everyone speak. So this is the question to each of you. If there is one piece of advice that in your vision that you think needs to happen as a next step to drive gender and diverse equity, what is that one step? Not Matt, you nodded. That means you're going first.
Okay, I'm
Just
on the
one
spot.
sentence here, not a long paragraph, just one.
Men need help too, to help women be successful. We don't have all the answers. I think there's been a sea change. So women can be helpful too, and helping men help women and help us all.
Yeah.
And so that would be my sort of words of.
You know what, Matt, I know I said just one sentence, but you and I have spoken about this before. Just give 1 or 2 very quick examples. And I know now it's longer than a sentence, so I blew it. But it's a critical thing. What do men need to know from women?
I'll just use this real quickly. Walking down the street one day with a woman, and traffic is coming this way. So I get on this side where the traffic is coming, because I guess that was what I was always taught to do. And the woman said to me, boy, chivalry is still in practice. I like that. Fast forward a few weeks, months later, the same action. Another woman said, why did you do that? And, I don't need you to protect me from the traffic. And so you're sitting there as a guy and like, okay, I'm trying to do the right thing. My intentions are to be helpful. I don't have all the answers. I'm trying to maneuver and figure it out too. But the intent is to be helpful. And so I think but you don't want to be a guy who's then cut off. And so the biggest concern, I would say, I'm more concerned that because of all of the stuff going on, Me Too, and all of these things that are important, that women may lose some of the engagement with men who may be afraid to engage with women because they don't know if they have crossed some unfortunate chasm. I get that we have to wake up and not be clueless. So I don't want to, but I think there is women could be helpful to say, hey, we get it. It is conflicting. And don't always brand us as Harvey Weinstein, right? Many of us are not like that kind of guy, but there are some obviously who are. So women can be helpful to help men, to help women, to help us all.
Right.
Okay. I do want to let you know, by the way, a question did come in about what to do. This is from Carla. Sassano about women who are older and how you help them. But so let's go. Who wants to go next? Give one piece of advice. Becky, you pick someone here.
Okay, Bob, I'll pick you.
Okay. My one sentence is this: process is important, but the bottom line is the most important thing. So hire and promote diverse people where you can.
Excellent. I think it backs into your first statement when you opened up today is walk that talk, require people to hire that diversity, right? And if they can at the time, then give them that time to really to do that, but give them the wherewithal resources to hold them accountable, right? So that's when it's going to happen. I think we believe it when we see it. Thanks, Bob. All right, and Tim, we'll let you finalize and pull together the last thought here.
Yeah, what they said, but also I think for me, it's widen the aperture and honor every person in front of you. A little what Matt said, you know, I've been out talking about the fact that until the white men in our company feel part of our growth story, there's a danger all we've done is tilted the narrative rather than widen the narrative and create a trajectory of opportunity. And I think that for leaders to step back, listen really carefully without thinking you need to respond. This is a data gathering time. This is a chance to listen to folks that have been traumatized in some case, but want to be part of where we're going and want to speak about that, but also have their concerns that they feel more empowered than ever to put on the table. Now is the time to open the aperture and really redefine the problem or opportunity in a much more broad and holistic way.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. You know, I think everybody wants to be well-intended. I think everybody wants to have more of that equity within their organizations, within their teams, but they don't know where to start. And, you know, I think fundamentally where we start is to start the conversation, right? Start the conversation with your manager, start the conversation with Matt or Tim or Bob. And sometimes that can be a little bit scary, or I don't know how to do it. But I think when somebody leans in and models that, then others will follow, right? So thank you for setting that tone today.
Can I jump in? Because we did have that question from Carl about how do you include women who are older? And we just want one quick answer, and then we're going to go to Jose for our sum up. And finally, our fearless leader, Edie. Does anyone have advice on how to include women who are older? I think it's a great question, and I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
You know, Bob, I would say this. The question is actually it's a good question, but it's also a strange question at the same time, because we put ageism on women, right? You have to look at Hollywood and how they treat women who have gotten older versus a guy the same age can get a leading role with a woman who is 40 years younger than him. So I think this whole thing about how we look at women as objects, as some sort of image that they have to adhere to, I think we have to stop breaking down those types of things. I mean, there are a lot of competent women who are maturing and who bring experiences, and they shouldn't be subject to how they look as part of the equation as to whether or not, or how old they are as part of the equation around their qualification. I just think that we have to speak up and knock that nonsense out of the ballpark. Get that type of thought process out. It's not going to be easy, but I think we cannot just constantly subject women to this historical benchmark of being some sort of object as opposed to being a human being.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. On that note, we are now going to Jose, who's going to give the sum up. I do know Tim has something, but don't worry, because your team can email me about for the Forbes article. I'd love that, you know, to widen the narrative, by the way. That's great. So Jose?
Thank you to all the panelists, CEOs, and the facilitators. There was so much good learning in this session, so it's hard to kind of summarize, of course, but there's certain things that really stand out, at least for me. And first of all, with Bob, if you want to build a strong organization, you need all people represented in order to serve your constituents. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but also what you said about having a diverse leadership team and how that sends a signal to the rest of the organization. And in turn, you're building diversity throughout the organization. And one of the things you said a couple of times, which is a reminder here, is hire and promote diverse people whenever you can. And lastly, putting the health of people ahead of everything else. And that's so important, especially during this time of COVID. So thank you for that, Bob. And from Matt, what I really took away from what you were saying is help people fulfill their potential, because everybody wants purpose and meaning in their life. And it's up to leaders to really help them fulfill that. And the other thing was around having a more peaceful and harmonious society. We need to serve society. I really like that. And of course, your example of don't benchmark people against yourself. Be open to differences, because it is in the differences of everyone that makes a great team. And so important at the end, what you said about that men and being, men are seeking advice. They're seeking help from women because they don't have all the answers. And sometimes it's up to women to help them be more, to help men help women. And that is so important. And thank you for sharing that as well. And lastly, with Tim, of course, like Becky mentioned, I love your personal story, especially, with the women that have surrounded you in your life, from your mom and your daughters, your wife, and of course, Mary Kay Ash, and all the learnings that, you have received over the years. And thrilled that you actually sponsored an ERG for women. And some of the learnings from you was around, innovation is a team sport that needs diversity. And of course, some of the diversity approach you take around setting clear goals, ensuring diverse slates of candidates, making sure people go through implicit bias training, having clear evaluation criteria, and putting women deliberately or intentionally in bigger roles, whether it's on the board or in the C-suite, and really making sure you focus on the data and analytics behind it. And of course, lastly for you, Tim, just listening to your people and making sure they all feel like everyone feels that they're part of the solution. So really great learnings, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. And now I'll turn it over to Edie to close up the session.
Do we all want to thank Robert and Becky and Jose, but truly stop at the learnings we had today? If we talked about 3 allies of her, of men driving change with business as a result, it is these 3 CEOs. And just to add, because it looks like at CBRE, Bob, you've really, the fact that you have been the chair of your 4,500 women's network is just extraordinary of what you've done as you've doubled and zeroed in on your double-digit growth in terms of leadership, and you emphasize hire and promotion. So thank you for all you do for CBRE and for the advancement. And Matt, it's just really important, as you talked about encourage, embrace, and engage, as you've also been so honest on men need help too, and everything you do to change technology. And we have good news, right? We got 22% women CIOs now for the first time in American history. So we keep focusing on how you and others are helping us drive that change. Tim, yes, I did know Mary Kay because with her pink Cadillac, right, as we all know, but she told us that 85% of all consumer spend is women, and that the economy for women, whether it's healthcare or consumer products, was so important, not only to the workforce with that motivation, positive spirit, but thank you for you. And as you've got Evernorth, Express Scripts, and Cigna together, all you've done to really promote that extra living. And as you added to Mackenzie, the 2 extra points, and your real focus on making sure the last one was data and analytics drive and that we all support. I think all of us are just mesmerized by change leadership. And I think all of us can just say thank you to you and your teams. And this is recorded. Hundreds will watch. Robert Reiss will be doing a Forbes article. We are just full of gratitude to each of you for joining WBC's CEO Forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You.